I guess we're live. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. If you can let me know that you're here in the chat, that would be great. I'll just wait a few more minutes and just tell you some things while we're waiting for some people. Marion, who had my wife, who's worked with me for many, many years, myself, and she will be doing podcasts and webinars and live streams on astrology and natural healing, which we think go together. Many people didn't know that I did astrology while I was involved as the program director of a wellness spa and during my time in practice. So let me just see here. Again, this is my first live stream, so it's new. And unfortunately, with internet problems before, when we had first scheduled this live broadcast, we lost some people who were wanting to join us. So today's venture will be a Q&A session. I'll talk a little bit about myself, how I got involved with astrology, the value I find in astrology, and I'll take your questions, which is the most important part. And then on Wednesday, February 24th, we'll do more of an extensive presentation, of course, having questions and answers as well. So Wednesday the 24th at 9 p.m., I will be posting this on social media as well. And again, it will be more extensive. Throughout these podcasts and live broadcasts, I'm going to have guests on, and I think you'll be really excited to see that as well. Okay, so just let me see. Just give a few extra. Okay, so we have some people on. Hello, Kara. Hello, Mare. Great. So let me just start now, and we can answer some of your questions I see that are coming on. So how did I get into astrology? Well, before that, I was a chiropractor. In 1978, I graduated from chiropractic. I was always involved with naturopathic medicine all the way through my chiropractic years. And so when I studied the art and science of natural healing, of course, I was interested in the psychology of wellness too. So I studied hypnotherapy. I studied many of these holistic healing arts in order to understand how to get people well in a holistic sense in terms of mind, body, and spirit. So it wasn't surprising that one day when I was at a social situation, I was at a party, that I sat next to a gentleman who was a medical doctor. He was a psychiatrist. I had met him at different wellness functions. And he asked me a question after a few moments. What did I have an open mind? And I said, well, I'm involved with holistic therapies, so I guess I try to be. And he told me he was interested in astrology and that he gets more from doing a session with one of his patients that he would in 10 regular talk therapy sessions. And I think I flippantly replied something like, I think you should see somebody. But he went on to describe how valuable it was, and I listened intently. There happened to be an astrologer at that party who was listening to our conversation, and she asked if I wanted to have my chart done. A few weeks later, I did have it done. And she told me, she blew my mind, and she told me some of the things that were so accurate about me. She went into some of the events that happened in the past. She also talked about some of the things that were going on in my life at that time. And she was very accurate, and she told me that I would be meeting a very important person that I might marry. coming up. I guess it was in the next 3, 4, 5 months. I can't remember exactly, but it was shortly. And I said to her, Julie, I don't think you're accurate here simply because I was divorced just a few years back and I was living a happy life as a bachelor. And she said, well, it's just astrology and that's what I'm getting. And so I met Marion at the exact time she told me. And I ran into Julie around that time, and she said, "So," and I had to tell her that yes, she was actually very accurate. So I began to study astrology within, I guess, the next 6 months. And it was so fabulous. The courses that I took many courses, including Vedic astrology when I was in the US, which is a different form of astrology. I do primarily Western astrology. The Eastern astrology is termed as Vedic, and so I took some of the courses in that. And I've also been studying traditional astrology and merging that into my consultations as well. So it has been an exciting journey for me. Again, I graduated in 1978 from Chiropractic College. I obtained my naturopathic drugless therapy diploma shortly thereafter and practiced for quite a while. I went down to the US where I was the health and program director of a major destination wellness spa, where we had, in high season, 80 to 90 people a week who came to learn about wellness. And so I had a captive audience. Marion and I worked in this environment for many years. We had our own program as well at a Marriott hotel. And for certain people, I also did their charts. I didn't let a lot of people know that I did astrology because I didn't want to have any of the, I'm very science-based when it comes to wellness, and I didn't want people to think that what I was talking about in healthcare was diminished in any way. But I came out in maybe it was a year ago, and told people, yeah, I'm an astrologer. I've been doing it a long time. And the value in astrology is absolutely incredible. And if anything, what I hope that people get from having their chart done is this, that they see that there is a connection. There is some type of connection to something bigger than we are. And for example, if I was to tell you that a specific event was going to happen in 2 months, and we'll say it did, and I give very specific dates. If I said to you between June the 12th and July 6th, this is the trend that is going to happen, and I'll describe what I mean by trends and prediction and so on. When you see this, that this trend that is predicted is accurate, there must be some type of purpose in life. That means that your life has you have a reason for being here. You have a mission. There's a purpose for your life. And that if we can describe that purpose, and if we can describe you through just looking at a piece of paper that has planets and houses and zodiac signs, and there's mathematical angles to that. If we can describe you and the events that happen, that means that there's some type of intelligence in the universe. And I don't want to sound mystical here, but there's some type of reason for everything that happens. So a big one for all of us is, especially these days, is to pull back a little from anger and judgment and to show more kindness. And astrology is the way that helps me to learn those particular values, and that if we can look at a particular chart and say, this is how you are meant to be, these are your personality characteristics, and these are the recent past events, this is some of the present things that are going on, and if some of the future things that you're told by an astrologer occur, that means that there is a path. There is a purpose. There is a reason for you being on this earth. And therefore, that each person has a particular destiny to fulfill, and that if, in fact, you were to live that person's life, having the parents they did and enduring or enjoying some of the challenges and opportunities that came that person's way, that made them who they are today, that you would be the same person. In other words, we can't judge anyone unless we walk a mile in their shoes. And I think that is the biggest lesson, at least for me, that keeps reminding me through astrology. So that is the value of astrology, the big picture value of astrology. Okay. Now, what about the smaller picture? Well, very often people come for various reasons to have a chart consultation. Okay. And hi, Joe. And various reasons. And sometimes it's relationships. Here, let me just tell you a little bit about the power of this. So there are planets in astrology that make angles to each other in your natal chart or your birth chart. And in your birth chart, which is fixed the moment you're born, at the time you're born, and the place. So we use that information to construct a chart. With that particular chart, the planets still move around, metaphorically, your birth or your natal chart. And as these planets, as the sun or the moon, Venus, Mercury, Mars, Saturn, each planet means something. As they move around and form mathematical angles to your fixed birth chart, it sets off a theme. Now, remember I said that it's not prediction in the sense that I could say you're going to meet somebody who is, if you're a woman or a man, doesn't matter, you're going to meet somebody 6 feet tall, handsome, blue eyes. That's not what you're going to say. But, however, I could say, during this time of, in the next month or two, you're going to be having Saturn square Venus, which simply means it's a challenge. And Saturn is a planet that restricts or holds back for various reasons. And Venus represents relationships. It represents really on a higher level what you value most, and money and things like that. But for example, if you had a Saturn square Venus challenge in your chart and you were involved in a relationship, I may say to you, this is a time where you may feel a little alone. You're not connecting within your relationship. However, this is a good time to repair any kind of problems that may be in your life, because it will bring up problems. And that's valuable. You could have Saturn trining Venus, which is easier. And that simply means that you are, there is some work to be done in a relationship, but it makes it a little easier. If somebody says, I haven't been in a relationship for years, do you see a relationship coming? There are many factors that I look at in a chart, but I could say there is, for example, Jupiter is on your Venus in primary progression, which is another way of moving the chart forward. I could talk about it transiting, where the Jupiter is in the sky now and how it's affecting your chart. And I could say, yes, it's coming up. It's coming up soon. Now, sometimes predictive astrology people wonder about destiny. And if there is such a thing as destiny, do I have any choices at all? And one of the axioms that I use in astrology is, yesterday was predestined, but today we have a choice. So within these trends that tend to be happening in our life, we still endeavor to make the best possible choices that we can based on the information that we're given. It's the same as, for example, if you were listening to the news and the weather person said it's going to rain tomorrow. So what do? You bring an umbrella. Right. So there are ways to mitigate some of the challenges. And when you can see opportunities coming up in your chart, you know you need to prepare for these so that you can maximize and optimize the best parts of that opportunity that comes along. So relationships are something that people talk about. We can also, in astrology, put two charts together to look at the nature of the relationships. You can take two people's charts and look at the planets and how they form and fit into each other as well, which is so invaluable when it comes to relationships. Because many people, many of us get caught up into our emotional natures whenever we're relating, and we're not objective. That's the wonderful thing about astrology, is that it's a chart. You're looking at a chart. I don't have one in front of me here, but if I had a chart here, I could say that objectively, to say somebody, do you actually listen to your spouse, to your partner here? Because your chart really shows that sometimes you have a tendency to speak more than listening. Is that true? And if people are honest, they will say yes. I mean, if it is true, and maybe with the other person, do you buy your partner things and don't feel appreciated? And it can be because the partner wants to just maybe a simple phrase like "I love you," and for that person who's buying that gift, that's their way. So you can describe objectively using the chart without getting emotionally involved what's at hand, what's at stake. Health, that's another area, of course, because I've been in the wellness business since 1978, in practice at that time. And where natural healing comes in. And of course, I do recommend orthodox medicine as a complement when necessary. But astrology came into my life as a way for me to watch the chart. As people came into the clinic, I was able to look at the chart and to distinguish and see those factors that were mirrored in the chart, everything from cardiovascular disease to cancer, and to watch these particular transits play out in their chart. Again, remember, transits are where the planets are in the sky and how they are mathematically affecting the angles and planets in your chart. And so it's been absolutely invaluable for me to use astrology along with a regular consultation. Now, of course, I didn't do this. I didn't, if I didn't think somebody was amenable to it, I didn't. But if I believed they would be, I got their information and we worked along with the astrology chart. Career, that's another one. Finances. There are aspects in an astrology chart that show some of the most difficult things that we have to live with. And these repeated patterns are so frustrating for people because they lie dormant under the consciousness, in our subconscious mind. So these repeated patterns, for example, a repeated pattern would be someone would say, why is it that every time I meet somebody, it only lasts 6 months in a relationship, maybe a year? And this has been going on for years. The chart, if we have the right time, and then birth time is very important because the chart moves 4 degrees every minute. So, but that gets into another topic. But if we have the right time, we're able to gain the knowledge that we need for any particular perspective. Okay, so any questions? I see a few here. Just let me finish this here. We'll get to some of these. If you could write down some of your questions, please, and whether you're coming from YouTube or Facebook, I'm not sure where it's being streamed. There's a few places. And I'll be able to see the comments here, the questions. Okay. But from a health perspective, getting back to this again, from a health perspective, it can give me so much information on what needs to be done. And again, if there are challenges that I can see coming up, I will say to people, look, in 6 months' time, there are some challenges that may come up in your chart dealing with health. So this is what I would like you to do. I want you, if you could, and we go into sometimes nutrition and diet, and if for example, I see that there are some health problems with the lymph system, I may say, it's a good time to start to exercise. I notice that, have you been gaining weight over the last year or so? And if so, we need to look at the carbohydrate intake. So we can be that specific with dates, with conditions. Now, I don't diagnose through the chart. I don't give a prognosis through the chart. I'm reading the chart from a particular perspective. And again, it is just giving people a heads up. And also opportunities. This is a wonderful time coming up for you to start a good health regime. And so it's absolutely a fabulous art. I'm going to be teaching classes and courses in astrology as well. It's an excellent study for people who are therapists, for people who just want to understand themselves, their family. And for example, I was talking about these patterns and some of the parts of the chart that show these repetitive patterns. Saturn is a place that we look to for where you have certain fears. There's a point called the South Node. It's not a planet; it's a point in the chart, but that shows some of the influences from your past and how they are affecting you now. There is an asteroid called Chiron, which I'm doing a mini course on that will be available soon, that is referred to as the wounded healer. Chiron is in mythology, is the centaur that Hercules shot with a poisoned arrow, and the centaur Chiron was immortal, and anyway, it was the wound that couldn't heal. And so this is a wound that we all have in different sectors of our chart. And some people, for example, it's in their relationship sector. And that could be the person that I described, where they just can't find somebody in their life. And once you can point out what the problem is and some of the solutions for it, it opens up something in the psyche. Once the psyche is opened up to possibilities, and this is where personal development and spiritual philosophy comes into it, we can, in fact, do something about these particular long-term problems. And that's why it's so exciting for me. I've taught astrology when I lived in British Columbia at Okanagan College University at their extended classroom, extended course offering. I taught intermediate and beginner and advanced classes. And I just found the letter when I was going through some boxes. We recently moved, and it was from the director of the college university, and he had said it was one of the largest attended, one of the largest and well-attended classes that they've had in that format, and they didn't really expect to get that number of students at the course. And some people may be on this live stream who were students of mine on the course. But I'm going to be doing online courses. I like to do mentored courses as well, maybe a combination of videos and me being there for live streaming and webinars. It's a fascinating subject that therapists should learn, I believe. I think that it's a great art to learn for yourself, for your family. And for those people who want to become professional astrologers, I'm a stickler when it comes to accuracy. And I'm very accurate. I'd like to think that I'm very accurate with the language of astrology. Because there's a lot of fluff out there. And some people take a course for a couple of days, and you'll see them on the internet talking about Gemini, and they're so off, for example, or Cancer or Taurus or any of these particular signs. And it's kind of funny, but hopefully they're not giving people advice based on sun sign astrology they get from the newspaper, which is good entertainment. Okay, someone had said, okay, can I describe astrocartography? Well, astrocartography is where we take your chart and place it on a map. I have a computer program for that. And through the lines that the chart makes, there are all of the planet lines are mapped out over any particular area, the world. Or for example, if you said, I'd like to go to California and start up a business, and I would do an astrocartography chart, and I would look at the planets that were influencing San Francisco, for example. And I would be able to tell you, these are the energies. This is what you may expect to find in a particular area. So, and even if somebody doesn't move there, even traveling through there, I remember I was looking at a chart of somebody who had gone through a particular area. Again, this is on the West Coast. And she had some health problems as she was going through this particular area, and it was a Pluto-Saturn direct crossover, which in her chart represented health, and so while she was going through there, it wasn't that, I think there was an explosion of diarrhea or something, but stomach cramps. But there are so much information that you can get from astrocartography. And even if you were to travel to England, for example, and you were looking to start up a business, or maybe you're interested in a relationship, what would it look like in England? And that's a specialized branch of astrology, but it works. And this brings me to this point, is that astrology is not faith-based. Some people say, well, I don't believe in astrology. Well, you may be able to say that now, but once you've had the experience of astrology, then you might change your mind. You should change your mind, because if it is exactly, nothing is 100% exact, but if it's 80% or 90% correct, there needs to be some type of readjustment in the belief system about astrology. Okay? Now, the interesting thing is that when I first started to do astrology and went to these courses, there were professionals that were there too. I was a little embarrassed sometimes when I first went, thinking, what would they think of? Here's a chiropractor, or going to something like, but I found there were psychologists in these courses, the first person I had to do a reading was a medical doctor, actually, who came into my clinic. So there are nurses. Some may be on the stream now. There are nurses and MDs and carpenters and regular people just like us. I've done charts for celebrities. So a lot of people may not say that they believe in astrology or that they've had their chart done, simply because although astrology is going more mainstream now, they just don't want to let people know that they're involved with astrology, and they keep it private. Okay. So that's here's one here. Yeah. About children. Let's look at that. No, you know what? Before I do that, I have a question here about astrocartography. To help a family and to choose where next to move. You can. There are two ways that I would do this. The first thing is that I would take, if somebody was looking to move for a business, for example, where they could be perhaps a little happier, the first thing I look at is where somebody is living. presently, to see what are the influences that are in play where they're living, where they may not be as happy. But even if they are happy and they want someplace that they would be more fulfilled, then we would choose a particular location based on that person's chart. Now, I would look at mom and dad's chart if there were a couple, to see what each person's influence was, or what was going on in each person's chart at a particular location. But the interesting thing is that you can put 2 or 3 people's charts together to form one chart and do an astrocartography analysis that way as well. So there are many ways to do this, and for example. As many of you know, we lived in Florida for some time, and we had some really good planetary lines going through there. Better in the Caribbean, and I lived in the British Virgin Islands for a while, and I had my Venus-Jupiter lines go through there. Ooh, it was so nice. And but they come up close here too, to New Brunswick, where Marion and I are now living, and so we love it here. And now there are crossovers that change. So it's longitudinal, means up and down. You look at the lines, the planetary lines, but also where they go horizontally. And so that's a fascinating take. But yes, you can look at a family and ascertain where the best places would be. Now, with astrocartography, you may find that there would be some place that is not great for you to live either. It could be the best place for you in the world may be, I'm not going to name a country, but it may not be some place you'd want to live. Okay, so we follow the lines to the next best country. Okay, now. I hope I hope that answers your questions. If not, just type away, and I'll narrow down the description about what I'm talking about. Is astrology helpful for children? Absolutely. I love doing children's charts. Of course, I don't do them with the child, but I do them for parents and guardians of children. Because, look, I wish my parents had an astrologer looking at my chart when I was a child. Wouldn't you? Because when you see a child's chart, it shows, for example, is that child, their learning style. Some children, I have said to the parents, I think you should put them in an alternative kind of school environment because they get bored easy. They're smart. They're not going to follow the standard teaching, sitting in chairs and rigid and told what to think and how to think. And so they may have put them into the Rudolf Steiner School, or any maybe even a charter school, something that is alternative, and they find that they flourish. In fact, you're looking at a child's health. You're looking at where, for example, that child may be directed in terms of a career. Now, if we were living 1,000 years ago in a small village and I was an astrologer, there wouldn't be many careers to choose from. Nowadays, there's thousands and thousands. So I'm not going to pinpoint a specific career necessarily for a child, but to say that this child may be, should be pointed to something in the creative arts, for example. And in fact, I've done charts for people who had kids. I'm thinking of a few now that were done 30 years ago, and said they would be involved with one creative arts and followed in their parents' footsteps, and sure enough, they did. And so it's fabulous for children. It's absolutely great. Nodal returns. You're having yours currently. You're speaking about, just to clarify, you're speaking about kind of the nodal return would be the North Node. Is that, just to make sure, just let me know if you could. and then I'll go into that. So yeah, just back to with children, it is absolutely invaluable to have a child's chart done, and you can also see when they're going through certain challenges. You can see what they are because children, we're all children are they haven't developed the intellectual capacity, some young kids, to describe what they're going through. So if a child is feeling a little withdrawn, for example, and they're not showing the same kinds of personality characteristics, maybe they're a little performing, a little shy, and you can see that in the chart. You can give reasons for why it's happening. Maybe you can see in school it may show that they're being there's certain problems. It can be through their not understanding their schoolwork, their studies, or it could be being bullied at school. And so these are the things that are important. Yes, the North and South Node. Okay. So the North and South Node, here's what this is about. The South Node in astrology is the past. It's your early life. Now, some astrologers who believe in past lives would say that it's the characteristics that you have bringing in from a past life that need to be healed in order to become the best person that you possibly can. And the North Node in astrology is where you are heading. Okay, now I think we have plenty of issues in this lifetime. So I'm not one to go into past lives. Who knows? Again, I'm science oriented. It could be absolutely true, but for me, I'm a Taurus. I need to see it. I need to feel it. I need to touch it. I'm kind of like your doubting Thomas, so I don't work a whole lot on faith. So in any case, and it could be, but the South Node are those characteristics that you brought over, that you had bringing up. It describes the issues that you had when you were younger. And when you're having any kind of nodal return, Saturn's return, which simply means that a particular planet or point comes to back to the origin, back to the beginning, back to where it originally started. As you know, it moves around your chart when it comes back. Any planet that comes back, any point that comes back is just saying, here I am. I have returned. How have you done over the last number of years? For example, many people who aren't astrologers have heard of something called Saturn's return. And Saturn's return comes around the ages of 29 to 32. Okay, so this is how you can see how astrology works as far as cycles. So 29 to 32 approximately, Saturn comes back to the place in your chart where Saturn was, okay, when you were born, and Saturn says, okay, you're not young anymore, you're not necessarily old, but something absolutely needs to change. And this is a time period where you will see people change careers, change relationships. They move. There are things that happen in their life. And it's simply because if you're not on point, if you're not where you're supposed to be, Saturn says we need to make certain shifts and changes. Okay? And so every 7 years, Saturn sets off one of these patterns of self-examination. Let's talk about another pattern. You've heard of the midlife crises, right? I was talking to somebody texting just about this particular time, and they're going through this midlife challenge, and it's around the age of 39 to 42, and this is when, again, planets speak to us symbolically, and things start to happen during this midlife crisis. It depends on how far away from ourselves we are. This is a time when we decide that something needs to change in my life. I'm in a rut. And some people, they make major changes during their midlife crises, and other people not so much because they're a little closer to where they're supposed to be. Here for example is the person who is a banker, and they say, I'm done with it. I've spent enough time in this particular career, and I'm just going to start to play music, because they were in a band part-time. right? They want to do it full time. So these are particular timing. So any kind of change, again, the North Node is a spiritual point. It's a subtle point, it's a spiritual point, and it simply means, are you following your destiny? Your North Node is your destiny point. Your South Node is where you've been. So astrology says, go towards your North Node. So let me give you a simple example. If your South Node is in the 7th house, that's the house of relationships. Again, today's live stream isn't to go into the granular aspects of astrology. It's made up of houses and planets and signs and angles. But the 7th house in astrology is to do with relationships. So if your South Node is in the 7th house, that means your North Node is in the 1st house. So this is what it would mean. The South Node is saying, look, we have some problems in relationships, and these are repeating problems. And some of the problems is that I give up a lot just to make peace. Sometimes I have to give up 80% to get 20% of what I want. So astrology, through looking at astrology in the South Node, is saying, but you got to move away from that and into the 1st house. And the 1st house is more of a dynamic house of getting what you want. It's the house of Mars, associated with Mars and Aries. It's very dynamic. So you got to have to, if your North Node is in the 1st house, it simply means you've got to start to look at what's important to you. And it doesn't mean being totally selfish, but you have to be more self-oriented. Keeping in mind there is balance in relationships, otherwise you're going to have more problems. But things tend to balance out. What do you need? What do you want? Are you giving up your power to other people continually? So when your North Node comes to the North Node, you could say something like, well, the North Node is saying to you, how have you been? How have you done? And any areas that haven't been completed, you're expected to measure up more. And how does that work? Well, the universe, whatever that is, sends you signs, sends events into your life. And that's so fabulous to watch how this works, that if there is a purpose to your life, and if there is something that your life is supposed to be meaningful, that you can gain something through watching the astrological movements of the planets and the points, and it gives you feedback. What am I supposed to be learning here? Sometimes it's painful, but sometimes it's very pleasurable too. Okay. So if your North Node is in Gemini, if the North Node is in Gemini, if you're talking about your North Node is in Gemini natally, that means your South Node is in Sagittarius. Now, that is a generational aspect. In other words, the planet Pluto, for example, when I was born was in Leo, but it was in Leo for a long time. So it's not as important as where Pluto is in your chart. What house is it in, for example? And same with the nodes. That's where the house point comes into play. So people born with the South Node in Sagittarius and the North Node in Gemini, if that's what they're born with, that particular generational lesson is to become less judgmental, perhaps, and looking at things from a perspective, instead of a wide perspective, is to be able to, the 3rd house is to be able to look at the smaller facts that make up belief systems. So communication is very, very important for people with the Gemini Sag axis. Okay, communication and publishing and writing and all of those things. But where it is in your chart, in your unique placement, is what I would focus on the most. Okay. Someone's husband is turning 50 in mid-June. That's a big turning point. Lots of Gemini. Yeah, there's a, okay. So with Gemini, what are some of the things that are happening now? Well, you've probably heard that there's a lot of planets in Aquarius right now, and Aquarius is an air sign, and they're making some nice aspects. Saturn's in Aquarius, Jupiter's in Aquarius. They're making nice aspects to Gemini. And so what it means is, so Saturn, what Saturn does is it grounds us. And when it makes a nice harmonious aspect to Gemini planets, it provides ways for us to, depending on where those planets are, it provides a way to ground oneself in life. So it's like life sends us those particular events or situations that give us stability, and that's really what it's about. Now it depends on the degree. There's 30 degrees in every sign. So, for example, if somebody has their sun in Gemini, depending on the degree, there's 30 degrees in the chart. Pluto has been doing what's called inconjuncting. It's a stress aspect to the sun in Gemini for a number of years. This planet Neptune has been squaring anybody with planets, including the sun in Gemini. And that is, it can be challenging and difficult. Neptune is a planet that is very highly spiritual and creative, but when it's challenging, it brings a lot of confusion. But it really depends on the degree of the sun and the degree of the planets. Because if Neptune, for example, is in Pisces, say 20 degrees, if your sun is at 25 degrees of Gemini, or 15 to 25 degrees of Gemini, I do what's called a 5-degree orb. In other words, 5 degrees on either side. It could be affected, but if the sun is in Gemini at 5 degrees, it's past, it's done. But if somebody's sun is in 29 degrees of Gemini, it's coming up. Okay, so that's what we look at when we look at trends. And again, remember the example I used of the umbrella? If it's going to rain, you bring an umbrella. When you're told there may be certain challenging aspects in a chart, there are ways to mitigate it, right? So if somebody's having Neptune squaring a planet that rules or is associated with their fifth house, for example, which is about investments, is one of the meanings, and they say, I want to invest a lot of money into a stock, I probably, unless there's other things to even that out, I would probably say it's not the best time. And for doing astrology for, gosh, how many years? Yeah, see, well, 1983. For a lot of years, I've done a lot of charts, and I've seen how it works. And when people follow the advice, now I don't ask people to follow it 110%. You have to use your own intuition and the events. But if they can follow at least some of the trends that I describe, and just for that person to invest, I'd say don't do a lot of money, just a little money, and see how it goes. And if you lose it, it's good that you learned that lesson. Okay. Questions. Yeah, let me. I just want to play something here for you as well. Back to what I was saying, that there are many people involved with astrology that I was surprised to see. Some celebrities, well, I didn't know them personally to know, why they would want to have a chart reading or whatever. But just the other day, well, here, let me just play you something here. I'm going to play you something. Let's see if I can find it here. Yes. Okay, so this particular, you may have heard someone called Jordan Peterson, very controversial psychologist in Toronto here. But the other day I came across a video where he was describing astrology from a perspective of he's also a Jungian psychologist. Carl Jung, for those of you who may have heard of him, Jungian analysis. He's very much involved with Carl Jung, and Carl Jung was involved with astrology, and very much so. And Jordan Peterson had described astrology in a certain way, and not to say that he actually uses it, but I want to play this. It's a very short clip for you. Just a little background too. I've come in contact with a psychologist in the past, and when we've talked about astrology, this is the way they couch it. I don't know much about astrology. I don't even know whether I believe in it. However, here's what I think. Hearing you talk about astrology, it's so valuable in that you're able to discuss a person's issues without them feeling defensive, because you're not blaming them. You're reading a piece of paper and you're saying that I think that you may have these kind of characteristics that need perhaps some work, and here are some of the good things. And that way you're able to go beyond that first line of defense. And so that's the value. But let me just put this on here. You just take a few minutes and let me know in the comments section if you can hear it okay.
The things Jung wrote a lot about was astrology, strangely enough, / astronomy. And one of Jung's contentions, this is a very interesting one, was that because the night sky was completely unknown, people could project their fantasies into it. And that's what they did with astrology. So astrology is this cumulative fantasy that's going on in the, roughly speaking, in the deep unconscious, projected onto the sky. And so if you analyze old astrological writings, what you're really doing is analyzing old fantasies, and because of that you could develop some insight into the structure of the mind. And so he did the same thing with alchemy in his later writings, which are very, very difficult to understand, but extremely worthwhile. Astrology was astronomy in its nascent form. And astrology was also science in its nascent form, just like alchemy was chemistry in its nascent form. And so sometimes you have to dream a crazy dream with all of the error that that crazy dream entails, because you have an intuition that there's something there to motivate you to develop the intuition to the point where it actually becomes of genuine practical utility. Now, when we look back on the astrologers and we view their contributions to the history of the world with contempt, we should also remember that the people who built Stonehenge, for example, and the first people who determined that our fates were in part written in the stars, were people whose astrological beliefs were indistinguishable from their astronomical beliefs. And you might think, well, in what sense is your fate written in the stars? And I would say it's certainly the case insofar as there are such things as cosmic regularities. So it was the dream of astrology that there was some relationship between the movement of the planetary bodies and the fixed stars and human destiny, and that's what drove us to build the first astronomical observatories, and to also determine that there was a proper time for planting and a proper time for harvesting, and a way of orienting yourself in the world, for example, by using the North Star. It's also the poetic ground that enabled us to identify the notion that you could look up and orient yourself towards the heavens, and that there was a metaphorical relationship between that and positioning yourself properly in life. And at a deeper level, the cosmos was the place that the human imaginative drama was externalized and draped itself out into the world as something that was essentially observable, so that we could derive great orienting fictions from the observation of our imagination. But so much of what eventually manifests itself as hardcore pragmatic scientific belief has its origin in wild flights of poetic fantasy. And it's also the case, by the way, that that's actually how your brain is organized, as far as I can tell, that when you, and it isn't just me, I actually, there's a very large, what would you call it, research literature outlining the relative functions of the right and left hemisphere. And it certainly appears to be the case that when we encounter something absolutely unknowable or unknown, what we do is drape that unknown thing in fantasy as a first pass approximation to the truth, and then refine that fantasy as a consequence of iterative critical analysis.
There we go. Interesting. So there was a question. Well, just back, Kyra, you had said your understanding is that we've all moved into Gemini. I'm not really sure of that particular question, what you're referring to, what we've all moved into. If you're talking about a generational thing, I'm not sure, but I would certainly love to clarify that for you. If you could clarify that in the questions, and I can come back to that. Buck, how do you do a country's chart? Is it done from the exact moment of conception? Yeah, that is the theory. Yes, and it's done from when a country has legally declared itself a country. So for many years, we'll talk about the USA. For many years, there has been a few charts floating around showing the USA. When 9/11 happened, that's when astrologers knew what chart. It's called well, it doesn't matter. It's a certain kind of chart that astrologers were looking at in order to determine if this was correct. When 9/11 happened, we all saw that it was, in fact, the working chart of the USA. That was when Pluto, USA had a Sagittarian ascendant, and Pluto went over the ascendant and set off the events of 9/11. And so that is a good working chart that we have. But it's difficult to find a country's chart based on the fact that there's different regime changes and so on. But it's when it was first declared. I'm not a mundane astrologer. Astrologers who look at world events and politics. I'm more on an individual level, but there are some astrologers who focus on the politics and countries and so on. It's fascinating, especially when you look at politicians. I was actually thinking of putting Trump's chart on here, and at some point, maybe I will. I'm not a I'm not a fan of his. Okay, so but at the same time, think about what I said earlier. What I have to consistently think about is that there is a particular reason why he's here, and I think he's brought up a lot of the deep unconscious of many people, and so like him or not like him, there are reasons for him to be here, and to see his chart is fascinating. Because he's a fascinating person, again, like him or not like him, and to see some of the events that led him to his particular place in history today. But we can do, I'm going to do many live streams like this, and again, this is just a general question answer period to familiarize people with myself, with astrology, take in some general questions, give you some idea of what astrology is about, how it works. But we'll go into it deeper for sure as time goes. What was interesting about this particular time, 2020. I just want to touch on this. Again, we've recently moved, and I pulled some things out of boxes. And some of these magazines that I had when we were in Florida were astrologers talking about 2020, 2019, 2020, 2021. And people who were mundane astrologers were saying that something big was coming up in 2020. They knew there was going to be financial upheaval. They knew that there was going to be worldwide issues and problems. They knew that there was going to be some business failures. Not one person had mentioned a pandemic, but they thought about war. There's one astrologer in retrospect who actually did forecast many things politically that did come about. He's a Vedic astrologer. Had also said that that there would be a war of some sort. So he looks back and says that the coronavirus is, in fact, we're at war with this particular virus. So again, astrologers were correct in their talking about trends, which they were all correct. But again, the virus wasn't mentioned. But it's fascinating to see. We can do a show one day on the coronavirus and the planetary aspects that brought this about. Any other questions that you may have here? Going through here. All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap this up if there's no more questions. I wanted to just tell you that Marion and I will be doing, again, more podcasts, and we're really passionate about people becoming well. Now, we believe that natural healing through dietary measures, natural medicines, whether you do yoga or herbal medicine, any of those things are absolutely incredible. And even if you are following orthodox medical procedures, that's great. If that's what but believe me that if you change your lifestyle, that's 80% of it. I have seen so many people become healthier, become, from serious diseases. They become better through natural medicines. But this isn't just about the physicality. This is not just about the physical body. Don't forget that we have feelings and we have thoughts. And our feelings and our thoughts can also make us sick, especially if we overindulge in negativity. I know that personally throughout my life. I've had to give up alcohol, for example, many years ago, and I truly understand the craving complex when we're under stress. So we're going to be talking about dietary measures that you can change. Marion's going to do some live streaming. Marion's fabulous at making the foods that we all love and turning them into healthier versions. Pizzas, for example. She makes incredible pizza and desserts and things that you can have that are healthier for you than having Haagen-Dazs ice cream. Why not have coconut with natural sugars instead? And of course, keeping everything in mind that, if you're diagnosed with diabetes, you have to be careful. But, for example, with diabetes, type 2 diabetes, when people follow through some of the natural healing protocols, they get better. I can tell you from experience, people get better. And then using astrology as a way to understand ourselves, our bodies, our minds, our spiritual directions, where we're meant to be, it's absolutely phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So we're going to put them together. We think this is an entire wellness package. Again, we're going to be doing podcasts and live. If you have any ideas for us, please, we'd love to hear them. If you have some suggestions of guests you'd like to see on our podcast, if you'd like to see some recipes, kinds of foods that Marion can show you how to make, if you want me to talk about on some of these podcasts, when we're talking about wellness, diabetes, let's talk about diabetes. Let's talk about water fasting. Let's talk about juice fasting. As soon as COVID is winding down, we want to do our wellness retreats again, where we bring people from all over and they come together and they have great food, and we have exercise classes and health lectures and all sorts of things, meditation classes. So it's great for reducing stress. So we have a lot planned. And we'd love you to be part of this. We'd love to have your ideas and your input. So email us or private message me or whatever you'd like to do on Facebook and let us know. Okay? So I guess I'll say good night. It's 9 o'clock here. I guess it's 8 o'clock Eastern time. Once again, I will post this, but Wednesday, February 24th at 9 p.m., I'm going to do another astrology session, but this time I'm going to have more detail involved. I will show charts on live here. I'll describe what it looks like, what I'm looking at. I'll pick somebody famous, and we'll look at their chart. Someone I haven't done. I don't, there's privacy issues unless somebody has died and they let people know, through their writings or whatever, that they have been involved with astrology. So with that, thank you very much, everybody, for joining me on this. Marion will be joining me on some of these live streams as well. And maybe Leia, our little puppy. So have a good night, everybody. Stay healthy and well, and see you next time. Take care.